Good morning, dear students. Welcome back again with the new session of Science to Disaster Management. Now, we are going to discuss about the meaning of disaster. Various dangerous events occur many times in the environment. They are called as disasters. Some of the main natural disasters are floods, wet and dry famine, means lack of water, scarcity of water, cyclones, earthquakes, volcanoes, etc. These are all of a sudden troubles to the mankind. Such events can cause changes in the environment and thereby cause damage to it. The environment is also damaged due to the use of natural resources for our environment. This leads us to sudden disasters unexpected to human. These are called as man-made disasters. Now, there are certain disasters which occurs naturally, which is beyond the control of the human being. But there are certain disasters for which man is the reason behind it. You can take, for example, tsunami. Excess of waste was being blocked, and all of a sudden, water was released, and it was like a huge hurricane of water flowing and taking many lives of many people, and there was crores of loss of properties. So, likewise, disasters are taking place, and that was the you can say a good example of man-made disaster. United Nations has defined disaster as a sudden event that leads to a huge loss of life and property. Words like huge and sudden are important in this definition. As a disaster occurs suddenly, it cannot be predicted, and hence precautions are not possible. Huge losses to the property occur in the area of disaster. There are long term effects on society due to incidences of life and property loss. Various areas of life like economic, social, cultural, political, law and administration, etc., are affected by it. Life in the area of the disaster disturbs totally. There is no loss of life and property of the people in the distress. Earlier, we have studied various types of disasters and measures to be taken. None of the different disasters are similar. Period of each disaster is not same. Some disasters are short term whereas some are long term. The reason behind each disaster is also different. Depending upon the nature of disaster, it can be determined that which component of the environment will be affected more. Earlier, we have studied the effect of various types of disasters and the precautions measures to be taken in case of any disasters. We can classify the disasters in other ways too, like catastrophic disasters, for example, cyclones in Odisha, catastrophic earthquakes of Gujarat and Latur, frequently buzzing cyclones in coastal Andhra Pradesh, etc., which lead to total chaos, huge loss of life and property in respective region. However, irrespective of all those, life has always returned to normal within short time. Disasters making the impact for longer duration are those whose after effects are either severe or severity increases with the time. For example, famine, various problems of crops, strikes of workers, rising levels of oceans, desertification, etc. By observing the images, we can say about the disasters which we are knowing it. You can see the pictures. Now, disasters are classified into three: geophysical, biological, and man made. Now, what is geophysical? For example, geological, earthquake, volcano, tsunami, landslides, landfall, erosion, alkalization, flooding, etc. Atmospheric, hot and cold waves, snowstorms, snowfall, cyclones, hailstorm, drought, flood, meteorites, sunspot, etc. Another type of disaster is biological disaster, which is caused to both plants as well as animals. caused through both plants as well as animals. Forest fire, fungal disease spreading, weed, aquatic carrot grass, common grass, etc. Animals infections, virus, bacteria, cholera, malaria, hepatitis, plague, insects bite of poisonous animals, etc. Then, man made, in them unknown poisonous gases, atomic test, unplanned action, accident, international level pay, we can say war, fire, bomb blast, forced migration, terrorism, robes, child labor, etc. These are various types of disasters which are taking place in and around us. Now, the effect of disaster. We have understood the serious effect of disasters with the help of above mentioned questions. Collapsing of bridges, flooding of coastal villages, shortage of food are some of the problems of floods. Collapsing of houses, developing cracks in land are some of the effects of earthquake. Disasters like forest fire and drought are adversely affect the environment. However, what is exact nature of these disorders? Whether there are any changes in nature before the occurrence of disasters, for how long the effect occurs after the occurrence of disaster, how it needs to be think over all these aspects. This helps us to understand the nature and the gravity of disaster. Disaster definitely affects the economy of the nation. The effect is always relative to disaster and economy. If any port is destroyed, their long-lasting effects is economy due to huge expenses on its reconstruction. An effect of disaster and social leadership in that if local leadership is not strong enough, citizens become confused. It affects the participation in rescue and rehabilitation activities. Administrative problems arise during the disaster. If local governing bodies are affected by disaster, related departments cannot answer the problems disaster efficiently. Answer the problems of disaster efficiently. All the concerned departments are affected by the disaster and thereby entire system collapses. Nature and scope of disaster. Taking into consideration the scope of disaster, some important facts must be thought over as follows. Pre-disaster phase, warning phase, emergency phase, rehabilitation phase, recovery phase, reconstruction phase. We'll discuss about them in short. Taking into consideration the nature and the scope of disaster, only three aspects of disasters are important for common citizens. Phase of emergency. Important character of this phase is that maximum lives can be saved by quick actions during this phase only. Various actions like search and rescue operations, medical assistance, first aid, restoring communication services, removing the people from affected area are expected in this phase. Gravity of disaster can be estimated in this phase only. Then another is transitional phase, that is changing phase. Rehabilitation work is started in this phase after the subsidence of any type of disaster. It includes clearing of debris. Debris here implies waste, restoring water supply, repairing roads, etc., so that it will help to bring normalcy in public life. Rehabilitation. Rehabilitation implies here we have to take any action to prepare or overcome the disaster. That is called rehabilitation. Rehabilitation of the victim is important aspect of this phase. Generally, different institutes affects monetary and other type of help to such people. It helps to soothe the mental stress at the earliest of this. Victims are offered and with the permanent mean of earning livelihood, and this is a true rehabilitation. Now, it can be individual rehabilitation, it can be region rehabilitation also. Individual means if person is affected individually, then personal rehabilitation centers are there where people can be sent and they can be treated. A training can be given to overcome all the problems. But in people, the group of people, if they are affected, then they can be helped out with the help of money and with the help of some jobs, etc. So these are few ways of rehabilitation. Now reconstruction phase, that is constructing back again. This is highly complicated phase. This phase begins in a transitional phase. People reconstruct the buildings and facilities like roads and water supply are restored. Farming practices are restarted. However, it takes long time for reconstruction. Planet Earth has experienced many natural disasters. Listening to the description of those disasters bring numbness to the mind. Most of the disasters are related unpredicted situations. Unprecedented situations have been occurred in the Asian continent and region of Pacific Ocean. Huge loss of life and planet Earth has been occurred due to such disasters. Generally, such conditions of natural imbalance have been arisen due to greed of economic progress of human being. So indirectly, human being is to some extent responsible for these disasters. In reality, old problems of several years have become fears. For example, increasing population, its increasing needs, emerging problems out of it are now of the extreme end. Such disasters have been increased after the World War II. Condition of instability arises in the country due to various reasons like economic inequality, racial and religious differences, etc. Incidences like terrorism, abduction, social differences have been a routine now. Population and use of harmful chemical is under ban in developed countries. Production and use of harmful chemical is under ban in developed countries. However, production of either some of these chemicals which can wipe out the human race is common in developing and poor countries. Remaining part of this lesson will go through it in the next video. I request you that while going through this video, please be with the textbook so that the wordings could be very much clear because the image may appear to be blurred. So I repeat it, please be ready with the textbook before going through this video. Thank you. Have a great day.